Communications Head for Confederation of Young Leaders. Welcome to the Indo-Israel Youth Dialogue Forum, co-hosted by the Embassy of Israel and Confederation of Young Leaders. We are honored to have amongst us the Ambassador of Israel, His Excellency Dr. Ron Malka, Chairman of Confederation of Young Leaders, Mr. Hemadrish Suvan, and Secretary General CYL, Mr. Vansh Saluja. Confederation of Young Leaders has successfully led track 2 diplomatic dialogues between foreign missions and young people in India and is distinguished to be the only youth organization working in this sphere. CYL is backed by a stellar board of advisors, which includes governors, United Nations advisors, vice chancellors, and bureaucrats. The CYL Youth Dialogue series has drawn wide attention from the political and academic circles of India, including from the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi. Collectively, programs at CYL engaged more than 50,000 youth who are spearheaded, shaping it as one of the apex chamber for youth organizations and young leaders in India, working at the grassroots level and with strong national and international linkages. Ladies and gentlemen, before we officially start the proceeding, I propose that we rise to observe a minute's silence to pray for India's former External Affairs Minister, Srimati Sushma Swaraj ji, and India's former Finance Minister, Shri Arun Jaitley ji. First of all, let's invite the Ambassador of Israel, His Excellency Dr. Ron Malka, Chairman of Confederation of Young Leaders, Mr. Hemadrish Suvan, and Secretary General, Mr. Vansh Saluja, to light the ceremonial lamp to mark the everlasting friendship between India and Israel.
Steadily going.
Yes.
This thing is steadily going.
The flame is burning bright. I request our advisor, Mr. Amitabh Indo, to begin our words to light the lamp. You can light this one.
Thank you. Now, first of all, let's invite Mr. Vansh Saluja to deliver the welcome remarks on the auspicious occasion of Indo-Israel Youth Dialogue Forum.
Good afternoon, His Excellency Mr. Ron Malka, distinguished young people from all parts of the country. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all. And before I deliver the welcome address, I would like to extend a heartfelt thanks to the Embassy of Israel. We've been in conversation since past few weeks, I would say months rather, the public diplomacy section representatives and us just after our first meeting, we were very confident and happy that the Embassy of Israel accepted the proposal of having a forum like this. Track 2 diplomatic dialogues like this, which engage young people, are very important. We have young people from all spheres of life sitting in this room from all parts of the country, especially from the government sector, people from various ministries, young people from eminent institutions, research scholars, as well as some represent young political leaders from different political parties. So this as a forum brings out the young energy that is there in India, and such diplomatic dialogues lay the foundation of a stronger and a more robust relationship, friendship, and partnership with partner nations. And when it comes to Israel and India, I think Israel and India have been all-weather friends. What could be more significant when one of the first few world leaders, when Mr. Prime Minister Narendra Modi won his second term, one of the first few world leaders who called in Prime Minister was Israeli Prime Minister Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu. And I feel this youth dialogue forum couldn't have been more timely, because the Israeli Prime Minister is just about to visit India in about less than 10 days. And I think in the context of that, I'm very happy that His Excellency could take out time and be here with us and interact with young future leaders as well as some present leaders. Why these track to diplomatic dialogues are very important is also, on a lighter note, breaks the monotony of governmental meetings, which the diplomats and the ambassador are always engaged in, and it helps young people in India, young leaders in India, to have a more deeper insight into what the opportunities are and how we can foster more youth-to-youth cooperation, as well as lay stronger foundations for bilateral relationships between countries. And in this context, I again welcome you all, and I again thanks the ambassador as well as the Embassy of Israel for hosting this young dialogue forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Saluja. As you rightly said, that this will lay the foundation to enhance the youth connect. Now may I have the honor to invite the Chairman of Confederation of Young Leaders, Mr. Himadrish Suvan, to welcome the Ambassador of Israel, His Excellency Dr. Ron Malka, with a small token of our love and appreciation. Thank you, Mr. Suvan. Now, may I have the honor to invite the Ambassador of Israel, His Excellency Dr. Ron Malka, to deliver the keynote address remarks on the auspicious occasion of Indo-Israel Youth Dialogue Forum, co-hosted by the Embassy of Israel and Confederation of Young Leaders.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your kind words. Speaking about the relations between India and Israel, which we consider natural friends, I can just tell you my own story, my personal story, just to give you this sense how much important and precious are those relations for us. Until about 1 year ago, I had a career in the financial markets in Israel. I was chairman of 3 big investment institutional funds. At the same time, I was the dean of a faculty for financial markets and banking. And I got this call from the Prime Minister office that he wants to meet me. Before that, he knew me for many years because I was a financial consultant for the Prime Minister office. And then I got to his room. I didn't know what it was about. And then he just told me that India is a very important, precious friend of Israel, strategic partner. I want you please to leave everything here to go there. There's a service for your nation, for your country, and go try to enhance and deepen the ties as much as you can. Try to find new formulas, new avenues of partnership, open new domains, because what we do is India is so successful, is so fruitful, rewarding for both sides. So that's what I want you to do. That's how I come here, because I'm not originally from the Foreign Service. I retired from the Israeli military 12 years ago. I was a full colonel. I was the financial consultant for the Chief of Staff. Our system is very flexible. So by the age of 17, as a high school graduate, I joined the army. It's compulsory service in Israel for 3 years. So then I thought I'm going to join the army for 3 years and then go and start my life, start a career. But then my commanders asked me to re-enlist. So I re-enlisted. I just went to officers course, became an officer. I re-enlisted for 1 year. Then they wanted me to ask me to re-enlist more. So I said, no, but I want to go to the academia because my passion was academia, education. Education is a very important pillar. I'll talk about it later. But they said, but we want you. So, as I said, they are very flexible. So they said, okay, you can go to academia, but stay with us. Go to academia on our expense and stay with us. That's how I stayed 25 years in the military, because I did my first degree, came back to service, second degree in economics, and then my PhD in economics during my service in the military. So I retired about 12 years ago. In my last position, I was the financial consultant for the chief of staff with my PhD in economics. And after I retired, it was very natural for me to go to the financial markets because I did my economic dissertation on the financial markets in Israel. So the way I retired, I started as a member in the board of directors of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. And after that, I became the chairman of the investment committee. And after 2 more years, as the acting chairman of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange. That's what I did. And after I finished my tenure in the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, I started to serve as a chairman of 3 big investment funds in Israel. That's how I got to know the financial markets, the business markets in Israel. So I had this defense background, economic and financial markets background. That's what our Prime Minister wanted me to bring here, this experience, because we have a very good, talented and professional diplomatic team. But then he wanted to enrich the skills of this team, because we still see that although the relations are growing, steadily growing from year to year, it's a remarkable change, still there is a lot of potential that is not tapped. And since there is mutual respect and mutual trust between Israel and India, and since, as I said, India is a precious friend of Israel, and since we in Israel have very strong values of friendship, I came here just to see how we can really enhance the ties, foster them, and take them to new domains, new fields. So, for example, after I came here, I connected between the chairman of the SEBI, the Securities Authority, with his counterpart, the chairman of the Securities Authority in Israel, which is a friend of mine, and now they are cooperating. I found this chemistry that I see a lot when I see Israelis and Indians get together. It's not only a change of know-how and methods, it's also joy that I see, that I feel. So it's something that this chemistry you can just feel it there in the air. So they are working together now, these chairmen, and they initiate working groups, and they're working about cyber, and they're sharing their know-how and the techniques of trading in securities and so on. And also connected between the CEO of the Mumbai Stock Exchange with the CEO of the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, and now they are cooperating. And hopefully in the foreseeable future, we'll see dual listing of companies in Tel Aviv Stock Exchange and in Mumbai Stock Exchange. Our governor of the Central Bank of Israel was here. He met his counterpart in Mumbai, Mr. Das, the governor of the Central Bank of India, and now they have started new domains of cooperation. We have a great deal with water. Water, I think, is the next main pillar of our relations. So I'm in direct connection with the Minister of Jal Shakti, Mr. Shakarat, his secretaries. Mr. Ari is a good friend of mine. We're both experts here, so some events about water, and we are going to bring all our experts and all our know-how and experience just to share here with India. It works so well. And it works so well also for Israel, because you need to understand, for Israeli companies to engage with the vision of Prime Minister Modi, the vision of making India, works so well, so natural, because Israel is a small, tiny country with full employment. We have even shortage of workers in all levels, hard workers, engineers, scientists, So for us to come to a place like India, precious friend, which we trust and we have lots of respect, to leverage our startups, our innovation, our companies, to upscale them, works so well. This is what I call synergy, exactly what we call synergy. So what we are trying to do, basically, is to connect the right people, because eventually it's people to people. So we can work on many levels, government to government, business to business, but eventually if you want something to work and work good, is just to connect the right people, to see this spark that I'm looking for. And once I get and I see and I feel this spark in the eyes, the rest follows. I don't need to do anything. So that's what I'm trying to do. So as I told you before, so I connected the governors of the central banks and the chairmen of the securities authorities and the CEOs of the stock exchanges and many, many others just engaged in. And then you see this chemistry, this spark, and the rest follows. Don't need to interfere. The rest follows. So that's what we are trying to do. And it works so well. I can only ask myself, how come it didn't happen before? But that's done. So now we're looking to the future, and I see you, the next generation, which I have so much faith in, with this aspiration, with this energy, with this spirit that reminds me of me some years ago as a youngster, with this same spirit. And I think that this is the future of India, because the future of the world is about innovation. And what I see here, the next generation of India, I feel the sense of innovation, of creativity, the aspiration to do things better, to advance. That's how we build our country. That's why Israel is considered an economic success, a miracle. And you can see this. You can see that the reality shows. There's those economies, those countries that invested and focused on innovation are those that perform better economic-wise. Those that didn't invent and they weren't focused on innovation perform poorly, relatively, in economics. So we come here to share our innovative techniques, methods, to share our knowledge, our experience. And just to give you the sense of how optimistic we are, just last week there was a big convention. I don't know if you heard about the Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Okay, so I will be there. It was 1,200 water managers from 256 districts, those that have the worst scarcity of water in India. So they are gathered here in Delhi, so I was there, sitting on the stage with the Minister of Jal Shakti and the two secretaries. And I told the audience that India is going to win this battle against water scarcity, for sure. Given that Israel, that started from a lower starting point, desert, mostly desert, the rest is semi-arid, and now has abundance of water, even supply water to its neighbors. And Israel sees India as its precious friend, as its keen to share our experience, our know-how, our methods. We want to see India implementing those methods and not doing the mistakes that we did. We did it once. So India doesn't need to reinvent the wheel in many, many domains and fields because it was already invented. And there is a proven concept that we want to share. So I know, since we've been there, we've done that India is going to win this war and many, many others. Just today in the morning, I was in a conference that was convened by a social. It was about cybersecurity. Israel is a world leader in cybersecurity. I don't know how much you know, but 20% of the cumulative investment of the world in cybersecurity flows to Israel. 20%, although Israel is only 1/1000th of 1% of the population of the world. 20% of the investment, cumulative investment in cybersecurity flows to Israel. How did we do it? First, we realized that cyber is going to be a very, very important issue. because now the world is transferring from the old world to the new world, and the new world is about innovation and technology and connectivity. We are talking about smart cars, smart houses, smart cities. All these smart or very smart techniques and methods, but they're also vulnerable to cyber attacks, and cyber is a weapon. So we decided to focus on cyber. And what is very important about cyber, and many other things, but cyber particularly, is that you need to be always one step ahead. So that's where we are, one step ahead. So it's a kind of structure that we built, because it's a very careful line of risk management. What we did is we engaged, we convened together the academia with the military intelligence and the industry. And we made the environment for them much more friendly. So we had to cut regulations, to adjust the legislation, to cut bureaucracy, to cut taxes, and to somehow encourage the graduates, those brilliant minds, to go to these fields, to start companies, to partner with companies and countries in the world in order to advance and be in the frontier of the research and development in this important area. That's where we are now. So we became very attractive. So many investments from all over the world flow to Israel. And Israel is a world leader in cyber. But this is only one example, shiny example, but one. We're also leaders in water. We recycle more than 90% of the water that we use. The second after us is Spain. They recycle about 20%. Israel recycle 90% of the water. We desalinate about 70% of the water that we drink. This is only an example to show that our structure made us leaders in many fields. And for us to come to India and to share, to leverage, to upscale, works so well. It's what makes the friendship much beyond, business or I say even strategic partnership in defense. So it's deep friendship. It's something that is very comprehensive, something that you just feel, real friendship. That's what it is. As I said, if you just add to that the mutual respect and mutual trust, you get the exact ingredients that you need for pure success of relations. I can talk more and more about it, but I think I gave you the sense of how we see those important relations, how we see precious India. I can tell you also that because you're youngsters, that the most touristed, the most attractive country for Israel is after they finish their army service is India. They come here about thousands of them, and not for short term, for long term. Because they want, to stay here, to observe the culture, the wisdom, the warmth of the Indian people. They feel so comfortable here. This is the chemistry that I'm talking about. I myself visited the first time India 24 years ago. I was an officer, young officer in the military, and asked for vacation. I had to wait 2 years to get 3 weeks of vacation, so I wanted to come to this. So I came to India for a few days, and I went to Nepal. But 24 years ago, I knew that I wanted. India seemed so interesting for me. I was so curious, and I promised myself that the first chance that I will have, I will come back to India, just to explore this incredible country. Unfortunately, reality is much stronger than our plans, so it took 24 years. But fortunately, I came back as an ambassador, so now I have the chance, to explore and to see. Just yesterday, I was there in Hyderabad. We inaugurated a new, beautiful plant, joint venture between Israeli company, defense company, and Indian company. It's going to be a remarkable success. And after that, I went to the trade chamber of Hyderabad, more than 100 CEOs and directors of companies that want to interact and to cooperate with Israel. I was so flattered, and I felt so excited to see the passion to cooperate with Israel. So that's what we are doing here. Just trying, just to conclude before I leave it for you for questions and answers. Just to enhance as much as we can those successful ties, because when something is so successful, so rewarding, you want to have more and more of it. So that's what we are here for. Now I leave it for questions and answer whatever you want. Just let's talk. I want to also to hear you, to see how you see things, how you see the future, what you want to do, how you see Israel, the relations with Israel. Just like talk about it, please.
Well, thank you, Ambassador, for your warm and committed remarks, enhancing the Indo-Israel blend of immortal friendship. And congratulations to your fantastic journey of your life, and which is itself is an inspiration for all of us, I'm sure. So now it's the time for open house discussion. Ambassador His Excellency Dr. Ron Malka would like to answer a few questions. Please raise your hand if you have any question. So.
Yes. Please do introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Yash. I work with a member of parliament in the parliament here in Delhi. I finished college a few months back, and the first thing I wanted to do was to visit Israel. I've never stepped out of India. Like, I've never visited a foreign country. I knew Israel was the first country I wanted to visit. I come from Kolkata, so we don't have a consulate there. There's this.
Oh, there is.
I beg your pardon. In the sense that, like, when I applied for visa, so like they told me that it would have to be handled from me or something like that. It's just a request. It's nothing else. I know Israel lies in a territory which is hostile and so on. So you need to be sure of whom you let into the country. But visa regime is still, I find it a little bit restrictive for Indians. It took me a lot of time, and finally I could not visit Israel because I had some other commitments and the visa was taking a lot of time. So it's just a request.
Yes. Thank you for your question. First of all, we have an honorary consul, not a consulate, but an honorary consul in Calcutta. We are going to nominate a new honorary consul for the Northeast, for the 8 Sisters, because we want, as I said, to enhance the ties with many, all parts of India. Visa to Israel used to be a problem, but it's not anymore. It's very easy to get a visa. So you just apply on the internet. There is a company that is kind of outsourcing that we are doing just to make it, to facilitate the process. And to get now, for India, to get now visa to Israel is should be very simple. So if you do what is required and just apply it the right way, it should not take more than 2 or 3 days. It's very easy.
I can take one.
Yes.
So, my name is Sanjay. I was at the media conference when you were with the minister day before yesterday at the Hotel Ashoka. And I had raised a question which got left out, the answer, when you were talking about the water, scarcity. So you said that Israel has got deep wells which are up to 1650 meters. So everybody was perplexed, all these district officers. That means about 1.6 kilometers deep, Yes. So we wanted to know how do you dig that much deep?
This is exactly the technology that we want to share. But since you asked, I want to tell you a story about what we did with these diggings. I don't know if many of you know, but drip irrigation was invented in Israel. Because we started, as I said, mostly desert, so we started a settlement in the desert. 70 years ago, most settlements, what they did was agriculture. Like it, the backbone of Israel was agriculture, like the backbone of India now is agriculture. It's basically agriculture, water security and food security. This is something that. So they started a settlement which is called Hatzerim. And they dig for water. And they didn't find much. There was only a few water. Not very much groundwater. So they started growing agriculture. But because of the water scarcity, they invented this special method of drip irrigation, which now is all over the world and is very, very successful, and you can grow much agriculture per drop, much more crops per drop. So a few years later, other settlers started new settlement, not far from them. And also digged for water, because they wanted to do what Hatzerim did, just to go agriculture and use drip irrigation. But they didn't find any water, so they digged deeper. And they improved this method, and they dig deeper. And then they found brackish water, salty water, warm salty water. It was very disappointing because you cannot grow agriculture with this salty water. It was in the middle of the desert. So what they did, they started fish farms. So they took pools and they filled them with this salty water and they put fish there, and it's so successful. People from all over the world are coming to see them. We sell from their caviar to Russia, from the desert. So when you have challenge, what they call this a problem, when we see it as a challenge, and you have the deep understanding that there's always solution. That's how we educate our young generation. There's always a solution. If you didn't find a solution, it's not because there isn't, just because you didn't look enough. There is always a solution. If you'll be creative enough and open-minded and think out of the box, you will always find solution. So, of course, we found many techniques to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, and of course we want to share those techniques. And whatever you find, if you are creative enough, you can do something which is rewarding, fruitful. So that's, and you also another thing that you just mentioned. We have here in India what we call centers of excellence in agriculture. Part of a very successful mutual project. We call it India-Israel Agriculture Project. Very successful. 28 centers of excellence where we just expose our knowledge and experience to Indian farmers. Just in 2018, 147,000 farmers, 1.5 lakh of farmers, Indian farmers, were trained in those centers of excellence that are spread all over India. And we want to enhance that. Now we just decided to go to the next stage and make out of each center of excellence, just to expand it to the 50 villages around it, 50 as a concept, and we'll call them villages of excellence. So I want to spread this know-how. And now we'll bring also techniques of water management to those centers of excellence. So drip irrigation is already there, but there are other techniques how to deal with brackish water, treated water in different levels for agriculture, what suits what. And so we have lots of experience with that because that's how we survive. And you're so keen to share this experience here. So digging is only one of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Hi, sir. My name is Sankalp Shukla. I work with multiple non-for-profit organizations in the field of rural development and development diplomacy.
Can you please use the mic so that it's audible?
I work with multiple non-for-profit organizations here in India on the field of rural development and development diplomacy, which includes Japan, Norway, US mainly. I did my post-graduation from a college which is called Indian Institute of Democratic Leadership, which is a political training institute. Our first batch visited Israel as a field research. Unfortunately, I was not a part of it because I was not well. But the report we got is that Israel is doing very great empowerment-based models of development in all the sectors. But I majorly want to know that what are the field of interests of Israel in India in the sector of education and healthcare, because the system in Israel of healthcare and education is very impressive. So what are the plans of Israel and India in these two major sectors? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I mentioned education and said that if you will ask, I'll tell about it. We have a lot of respect for education. Actually, we built our country on one of the major foundations of Israel is education. For instance, my parents, they immigrated to Israel in the early 60s from Morocco. And they said to themselves, that's what they told me later, that they are going to build this young country on education. Because when we established Israel, when we declared independence, which is not far from when India declared independence, about less than 1 year, we didn't have any natural resources in Israel. Mostly desert, there was semi-arid. So we knew that our main resource is human capital. So we invested in human capital and eventually in education. So both of my parents, for example, are teachers. Both of my brothers are teachers. As I told you before, my passion was to go to the academia. And so the day that I retired from the army, I went to the financial markets, but I started a career in the academia. That's how I became the dean of faculty for financial markets. So we did a great deal with education. Now, with India, we are going to sign, it's almost ready, an agreement of partnership in education. So what we want to do, as we do with many other fields, is to bring the experts from Israel and just make them share their methods, their know-how. But it's not only that, we also attract missions and delegations from India to come to Israel. We attract students from India to come to Israel. 10% of the foreign students in Israel are Indians. 10%. And we want to have more of them. So there's a lot deal with education. When I said investing in human capital, so it was first and foremost education, but also healthcare. And when we do that, we don't leave anyone behind. So it goes, even to the distant settlement in Israel. So also in healthcare, we are world leaders. There are more than, for example, if you take only digital health. Now, there are more than 600 startups in Israel, only for digital health. And again, we are keen to share those methods, those techniques, those know-hows. So I'm in direct connection, even personal relations with Dr. Indo. Dr. Indo is the head of this program, I say, important, very, very important program of Yushma Barat. And what I do is just I share with him and all the know-how, the breakthrough technologies, the frontier methods, and equipment that we have in Israel. And I connect him to the leading people in Israel in healthcare sector. And as I told you before, I just, connect and engage the right people, and then the rest follows. So that's what we are doing. We are keen to share also in this important field also our know-hows and techniques. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting the important facts. Yes, ma'am.
Please do introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Priyanshi and I'm a final year finance student at University of Delhi. So since you two had a finance background, one of the biggest problem which we see in India during disinvestment and regulation easing in finance industry is a lack of trust, because as soon as you go for deregulation, you see some or the other scam happens or some or the other fraud happens. Even one or two cases that actually shakes the public opinion in deregulation, and the government in turn returns to that fist hand policy. So recently, the government imposed angel tax on the startups in India, which was eventually withdrawn recently, just 2 days back, considering that startups didn't consider it friendly. So, sir, taking as an example of Israel, how do you manage this actually trade-off between maintaining the ethics in corporate? Because deregulation certainly involves a lot of risk, because one wrong step and the entire public faith in deregulation gets shaken up. So how do people in Israel, how do the government in Israel actually maintains this balance while maintaining startups and as well as maintaining the public faith in the corporates and deregulation?
Thank you for that. Talking about financial markets, we understand that the sensitive balance between the will to be efficient and competitive, but then transparent and regulated in order not to take unnecessary risks, is the core of financial markets. So what we do in Israel, and hopefully in other places in the world, we are trying to find this equilibrium, this point of equilibrium that balances between the two. So it's a very careful line of risk management. From one hand, you want just to control, to regulate, to be sure that nobody takes unnecessary risks. But then you know that you pay in the return that you can get from these financial markets. And from the other, you want to unleash the private sector and the financial markets and facilitate things for them, make the environment more friendly and less regulated in order to make them be more successful, more fruitful. So it's a very careful line. What we did in Israel, and you talked about trust, which is very, very important in financial markets, is we built this trust. And you build it bottom up. It's a process. It's a bidding process. It's not something that you do by one day. So we prepared the ground. We strengthened our financial institutes, bankings and non-banking institutions. We make our courts of law more financial, more functional, in order to facilitate things for the private sector. And only after we did that, we started privatization, which was a massive privatization. So the public sector sold to the private sector many, many entities and projects and plans. So once the ground was fertile for that, it was successful. It's not that it was perfect, no. There were many lapses in the way, things we needed to correct, but this is the way to find the equilibrium between the will from one hand to unleash the private sector, but from the other hand to regulate it and to keep it under control. So it's a careful line. And trust is not something that you build in one day. Something that you build bottom up, and to be, as I was told when I came here to India, just patient and persistent, and then it works. Thank you.
Next question. Next question, please. Sir.
Hello, sir. This is Rohit, and I work towards artificial intelligence in education. And as you rightly mentioned, that Israel is one of the leading countries in the cybersecurity division. So, as the fourth industrial revolution is kicking in on the backbone of technologies like artificial intelligence and blockchain, so how do you think can Israel play a crucial role in securing everything that is being present on the internet and all the things are connected? So that's what I wanted an insight from you.
Talking about cybersecurity and safe as general, you can never be totally safe. But then, as I said before, in order to be safe enough, you need to be one step ahead, advance from the other. So whenever there is another method, another technique, you are prepared to that. So when we are talking about cyber defense, we're talking about different methods. So it can be all the approaches. It can be passive. It can be active. It can be proactive. Preventive. We're talking about resilience. So it's different approaches, different domains, and it's layer on layer. So it's a comprehensive approach. But if you're always step ahead from everybody with the technology, you know that you can, it's not that you can only defend yourself, you can even take preventive actions to defend yourself. So this is a comprehensive method, and eventually is being, in the frontier of the technology, because it's always changing, rapidly changing. We want to be always the first with every technique that is there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Sir.
Hello, sir. So I am Rahul. I have been working with the Ministry of Rural Development as Prime Minister Fellow, and now I am working in the Reserve Bank of India, and also going for PhD in Financial Economics at University of Texas, Austin. So it is great to know that you are also from economics background. So my question is related to that only. So FDI investment in India from Israel has been good, but it has not been great considering that we are naturally rare and also we are a strategic partner. It ranked 43 in the list of the FDI investment in India. So what do you think is the greatest impediment for that, so that our economic and more investment cooperation can increase? So do you think that red tapeism or less incentive for private investment in India is one of the reasons for that?
Well, actually, it's in order to encourage and to facilitate mutual investments of India in Israel and Israelis in India. We need to build a structure of incentives. We just define what the goal is, and the goal is just to enhance and to advance and to attract more investments. But then it's not enough. We need to build a whole structure that will make it more attractive. It will give the incentive for both sides. So when I talked about the engagement that we are doing between the financial markets, this is part of the process that will enable us to build this structure of incentives. So when the governors of the central banks are talking and somehow coordinating the regulations and working together, and when the chairman of the security authorities are coordinating between themselves, and the managers, the CEOs of the stock exchanges, and when the bankings are starting to talk to each other and somehow accept each other's methods and techniques and accept them, this is all part of this building of structure that will give the incentive and make these mutual investments more attractive for investors from both sides. So that's what we are trying to do, to ease the doing of business, to make the environment more friendly, both for Indian investors and Israeli investors. So once we make the ground more fertile, we can encourage them. For example, since we, as I said, we announced this policy and we declared that India is a strategic partner of Israel. Now the Ministry of Economics in Israel offers special grants for Israeli companies that will come to invest here in India. Special grants that they will not get if they go to another country. But if they come to India, they will have special grants. We also initiated a mutual fund, investment funds. It's called I4F, $40 million funds, that whenever two companies, one from Israel, one from India, decide that they want to collaborate, to start joint ventures, some kind of cooperation, they can apply to this fund and get funds for that. So these are part of the steps of building this structure of incentives. It's a process. It's not something that you do on one day, but we are there, we are on that.
Excellency, as you rightly said, that it's a process.
Excuse me, but I have to go to another meeting.
Yes,
So-
yes, thank you.
Last question.
Okay, one last question.
Last question, please.
Please.
Ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Roshni Chaudhary. So I work in public policy management consulting. So I worked with firms such as Ernst & Young and Deloitte. So, sir, it's a great understanding we have that India and Israel are natural partners and they are strategic allies. So going forward in terms of strengthening this relationship so that an ongoing knowledge transfer mechanism between both countries can be formalized. So, sir, what would you think would be the key initiatives which India needs to take to institutionalize a formal mechanism where knowledge transfer happens on an ongoing basis between both countries? What would be the key steps going forward?
Thank you. Well, as I said, it's a whole process. So, and we are on it. We are on it because as Israel is keen to share, to collaborate, and to enhance the ties with India, India as well is keen. That's what I feel. It's my impression, my strong and deep impression, that India is keen to share and to collaborate and to joint venture with Israel. So, as I said, what we are trying to do is to give more and more incentive to that, and for both sides. Israel does that, India does that. And we're trying to facilitate the processes to make it much more easy to get permissions and licenses and to reduce taxes. We are just trying to work now on a trade agreement that will enable, and facilitate those processes for both Israelis and Indian companies. We engage with investment funds, Israeli funds, and Indian funders to work together. So, as I said, both sides are doing the steps that are needed. It's a process because it's different organizations, different authorities, but it's underway. It's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Now is the end of the wonderful brainstorming session. Lastly, I would request all the delegates and the guests to join us at the dais for a group photograph, please. Thank you.
Some good comedy first, that's okay. I'll be back. Please hurry up because His Excellency needs to leave.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Quick, please, quick.
थोड़ी आगे पीछे आ रहे हो as such. ठीक है तो साउदर हो जाओ.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.